So Mark Turner, there's one that's got the vice in the background with the green background. He's been tying flies for over 50 years, if you can believe it. And he became a professional tyer as a teenager, and he was basically after some beer and tackle money for doing that. He was tying for 5 shops in Cardiff, because he's from Wales, but he also tied for a number of years for tackle shops in Ireland, and he was doing 9,000 flies a year. And he said to me, he felt like his arms were going to fall off. So that's what you should be aiming for, Mark Thomas.
Wow, 9,000
flies a year. He's tied for some celebrities, including Gene Pitney, the singer, Lord Brecon himself, Owen Arwell. Is that Hughes, Mark?
Hughes, yes, the conductor.
The conductor.
And his father.
And his father, and Frankie Vaughan. So Mark is on the banks of the River Teifi in West Wales, so that's the local love of his life. And he's taught me to tie flies, and we're very lucky to have him here. So that's who's going to be taking the main lesson. I'm going to start by finishing, and we're going to show how to finish a fly, because if we go through the fly and then you can't finish it, it'll all come to bits and we'd be stuck. Well, a whip finisher, I would say, I'm going to show you how to finish with your fingers as well. Some of them have springs on, but that's the basic shape. And what we're going to do is just lay the whip finish on the thread like that. And I'm going to zoom in there for all you people that like detail, because I know you all do. You detail addicts, you know who you are, detail addicts. I'm going to just hook the thread there on the top hook, and I'm going to loop it over to the back, loop the bobbin over to the back, and then I'm just going to rotate the whip finisher very slowly up like that, and you can see that's a number 4 there. So I'll go back and do that again, because once you're in that position, you are good to go. So we'll hook it in there, part the thread at the back, rotate the whip finisher slowly up like that, and we're at the number, kind of a number 4 there. And then we're going to rotate, and this is the 4th rotation. It's good practice to do a 4-turn whip finish, or you could do a 3-turn. And then we're going to push up through there, disengage, he says, disengage the round bit at the bottom, and then slowly pull through and unhook and finish. Just put the hook a bit tighter in the vise there. And that's essentially it. So I'm now going to bring that to the front, and this is a method I much prefer, is using it with the fingers. I don't think there's any need to zoom in on that whip finish. I think you can see what's happening. So I'm going to lay my fingers, 2 of them across the thread like that. So 2 fingers across the road. That's the first step. Over the hills and far away to the back of the hook, and then just slowly rotate your fingers to point them at the ceiling, revolve them up to the top of the hook, just drop the middle finger down slightly, and you can see that figure 4 again. You can see, if you could see behind my fingers, there'd be a figure 4, and I'm going to push the index finger forward.
All right, yeah.
Rotate them.
Yeah.
Push the index finger forward and just rotate them and put them back to the original starting position. 2 fingers across the road, up to the ceiling. Drop the middle index finger down and just push the thread over. Rotate back to the starting position, lift them up, and then I'll just speed up so you know what it looks like. Rotate. Now I'm going to put my finger in there, my index finger on the left hand, and you could put your scissors or a bodkin in there, and it's important to keep the thread tension on there so it doesn't twist up, otherwise it will stop, start, and just draw it up slowly. and then that completes the whip finish.
Very nicely demonstrated, Will. Very, very good.
Again, fingers over, up to the top, lift them up. Number 4, push over, push over, push over, and the 4th.
Very, very neat. Very neat.
Yeah, very good. Very good, Will.
Well done, Will.
Will, can you just do a couple of half hitches now? If
I
you
will
have
do a couple of half hitches. Now then, this tool, you'll notice, has got I've got a spike at the end of it, but a lot of them, they just have a little hole at the end like that. Or Mark's got a piece of tubing, and I'll show you how to do this with the scissors as well. So we've got the hole in the end of the, this is a bodkin tool that I've made myself there. And we're just going to wrap the thread around it, forming a loop. Very, very loose. There's hardly any tension on this. I'm going to push it over the eye and just slip the thread over it. Now that's gone to the back of that lump of thread there. It's not necessarily what you want. I'm going to zoom in on this in a second. Just do that again. Loop it over and pull it tight. I'm going to zoom in for you, chaps, so bear with me. That's better, isn't it, for you, detail?
That's superb.
Loop the thread over, bring it to the front of the vise, it's the wobbly hands, and just gently. And that's a half hitch, so 3 of those, which I've just done, is the equivalent to a whip finish. I'm going to loop that over, draw it up. And if you haven't got one of these,
you can do it by hand.
You can do it by hand, and you can use your scissors as well. We'll make a loop over these scissors, and there's the loop. You can all see it. We'll put it over the eye of the hook and rest your scissors on the eye and pull the thread tight. And as you pull the thread tight, slip the scissors back, and that will go right. Whoops, I missed the eye of the hook there. Make sure you've got the loop over the eye, and that will whip finish it as well. If you've got very sharp scissors like me with an edge, you might fray the thread slightly, but most scissors don't have those, that edge. Let me see if I could do it with my finger. Just put it on with the finger. I've waxed the thread here, so it's sticky. You can put the loop on and then just draw it up like that with your finger. And I frayed the thread a bit there, but those are the principles of finishing the fly. That's quite key. That's several ways of doing it. How are you feeling about that, chaps who are relatively new at fly tying?
Which one were you using, Mark, the most when you were tying that many flies? Which one did you use the most, Mark?
Mark.
Sorry?
Can you hear me okay? Which one did you use the most? What's your preferred one?
Using the hand whip finish.
Yeah,
without doubt. The less material or tools you have on the table, the better, because as I was saying to Will earlier on, all these different sort of tools usually end up on the floor, and you spend more time looking for them than getting on with tying the flies. So a pair of scissors, hackle pliers, probably as much as you need, to be honest.
Note how Mark and I put the hook in the vise. We put it horizontally, and we put it in the heel of the hook as well, which Mark will show you there. So that's at the bottom of the bend. That's where the heel of the hook is.
Yep. The reason being is that it's the greatest surface area.
No,
so the vise can get a good grip on it. You'll notice the point is sticking out. It's something you will learn over time to avoid at all costs. But what we're going to tie is a very, I would say, simple pattern. It's a Pheasant Tail Nymph, which was first tied way back in the 50s by a river keeper called Frank Sawyer, who, instead of using tying silk, used very fine copper wire to tie the fly. It's not used so much now because of probably because of the advent of beads, but I've used it in the past on the test, and it certainly is a very, very exciting way of fishing. The idea is that you cast the weighted fly due to the copper wire above the fish, which duly sinks, and within a foot, 2 foot of the fish, you just lift the rod up, and the fly lifts up through the water. It's what they call an induced take. It's very exciting to see, because more often than not, you obviously can't see the fly, but when the trout takes, you'll see the white of its mouth, and that's the key to strike the fly. But we'll have a go. I'm using waxed silk. I'm having to tie over the top of my mobile phone, so if I do start wobbling around, please forgive me. Now, when you start tying the thread on the fly, just try and pinch it so you've got just a little stub which you can cut off. I'll just run through the fly first of all, from start to finish, and then we'll go back and then we'll tie one together. So what we'll do, we'll start off with a little stub of silk, and we'll go from right to left over that stub to about 5 or 6 turns, and then we'll come behind it and just leave it standing up there on its own, and we'll just cut that off with the scissors. Now, as we're going down the shank of the hook, if we went vertically, we'll start hitting the point of the hook. So what we do, we come at an angle, avoiding the barb. And we'll just come to a point just above the bend of the hook there. Not sure if you can see that clearly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
good.
And we'll take a piece of pheasant tail. I've got a nice dark green one here at the moment, so we'll just take, on this size hook, we'll take probably about 5 fibers, and we'll pull them away at 45 degrees from the shank, and just grip the tips. Now what we want to do is to tie the tail around about 1/8 of an inch. That's all we need. You don't want a tail like that. You just want something a little tiny stub, about 1/8 of an inch. And we'll just put 1, 2 turns, and then pull the pearl back, and then 1 in front. The idea of the tail is to imitate the little setae, the little tails of the nymph. And we'll then get a piece of gold wire and 3 turns to hold that in place, and then run the tying silk up to a point where I actually made the the cut of the tying silk. So that's your sort of marker, if you like. It's probably 1/8 of an inch behind the eye, and then wind the pearl in touching turns, so you don't want to go over any of the pearl you tied before. I'm just going to put another one on, and then with my finger behind it to hold it in place, then tie it down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One for his knob, I think is the expression, just to hold that in place, because what we're going to do with the wire is come up at an angle and put 1, 2, 3 turns on that. You could do more, but you want to see a bit of the body. Now I'm unraveling the turns I've made just to anchor the pheasant tail in place, and we'll do, say, 4 turns on that to hold it in place. And then with your scissors, and don't use the tips, by the way, on wire, use the scissors sort of lower down, just cut that off. Take the pearl back over itself, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 turns to hold it in place. Now, where that little stub of wire is where you've cut, just with your thumb, press it down out of the way and down. Now take a little pinch of seal's fur, or in this case I'm using squirrel fur, so it's a very sort of wispy little an amount, and just place it behind, and with your thumb and forefinger just roll it together initially, and it'll look like a little sort of ball there. Now what we're going to do is just to tease that out a little more so it's not clumpy, and then finger, thumb. It helps at this point to hold the bobbin holder with your left hand and pull the silk taut, because otherwise it would be rolling around all over the place. So just hold the silk taut till you've got 1 inch, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, it doesn't really matter depending on the material you're using. And then we're going to make a little, what's known as the thorax, and round, and just pull it back with your finger and thumb, and 1 turn to hold it in place. Lift the pheasant tail up and over. This is going to make what they call the wing cases of the nymph, and just put 1 turn in just to hold it in place. Then go back 1 turn underneath, because what we're going to do is try now to tie this in place, and by putting a turn underneath, it anchors the thread, so you can put quite a bit of tension on it now, and it won't rotate or slip because it's tied underneath. So I've put 4 turns on that, and we're going to now cut the surplus off as tight as we can to the eye and do away with that. You may find there's a little bit of fur floating around with it. Don't worry about that. It's sortable. So we're now going to do the whip finish. And what you want to do is to go as tight into the eye as you can, because all those little stubs which were missed, if you like, or not cut close enough, you can close and get rid of by the tying silk. So I put my finger on top of it just to stop it spinning around, and away we go. Now pull it down and away from you. Sometimes you can hear a little click or a little thud. If not, you can feel it tightening and bedding in on itself, and you can then cut the fly or the thread off, and that's basically it. You can clear a bit of the longer fibers away, but or you can actually pull them out and make it look a little bit more buggy. But that is a pheasant tail nymph. Now this provides, if you like, the basis for a lot of flies by putting in the tail, the body. For arguments, well, for instance, you could put a peacock herl thorax in there. You could make a wool thorax. So there's lots of different things you can add to the basic design of the fly. You can put in, as people do, a strip of tinsel over the top, what they call a flashback. So there's lots of different things you can add to this very similar simple pattern. You could use different colored wires, very popular today, you know, sort of different colored wires. Obviously the peacock herl, there's a range of different colored peacock pheasant tail you can use. I mean, I'm showing you a claret there. I'm showing, that's the natural there. So again, you know, that's a good pattern color to use, or a yellow. So there's a range of flies which you can tie just from, you know, changing the material.
Nice one.
Excuse me. Any questions?